I'm Stephanie Wilson, and you're listening to Freedom Over Fascism.
We want to get to know Kamala as a person, not necessarily as a politician. People want to know her heart. They want to know what she cares about, what is important to her. And that's how you connect with people. So going on those podcasts actually, I think, is a super smart thing because the legacy media doesn't ask those questions.
Hi, friends. We've made it to the silly season. And to make it all more complicated, two hurricanes right after one another are devastating Florida and the southeastern United States. And as if having life-threatening weather events weren't enough, Republicans are lying about the FEMA response and performatively refusing to take the White House's calls. I'm looking at you, Ron DeSantis. It's all an effort to sow chaos and to convince people that the federal government is incapable and unwilling to help them, which is pure projection, since the Biden-Harris administration swooped into North Carolina right away and began emergency response. On the other hand, Republicans want to abolish the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, the National Weather Service, and FEMA itself. And the Republican Speaker of the House recessed the Congress when the second hurricane was building strength in the Gulf, knowing that FEMA was going to need more money and leaving town anyway. But the biggest problem right now is the legacy corporate media's complicity in this right-wing disinformation campaign. The morning shows on Sunday continue to feature habitual liars like Tom Cotton and others who won't even admit that Trump lost the 2020 election, which is a stupid question anyway because we know they're trying to steal the next election. So wouldn't it be better to uncover their efforts to steal the 2024 election on the premise that Trump and a whole lot of people have been convicted in relation to stopping the peaceful transfer of power? So instead of doing actual reporting, the legacy media is playing the Republican game and continuing to moan about how Kamala Harris isn't doing serious interviews. What? A. The popular podcasters' questions actually are more serious and thoughtful than the questions that the political corporate media are posing. Just last night, as I record this, Harris's interview with 60 Minutes dropped. Mind you, Trump refused to go on 60 Minutes, in part because they would fact-check him, and neither he nor J.D. Vance is capable of telling the truth for two sentences in a row. That interview was full of outdated gotcha questions that the other side would never have to face. Changing her opinion on fracking? Are you freaking kidding me? This is the most important question as the opponents are fomenting violence against immigrants by lying about them eating pets, while Republicans are sowing chaos in the face of two of the worst hurricanes in history, and while Trump and Vance give no detail on any plan except for what's in Project 2025, which promises to gut the administrative state, jail political opponents, ban abortion and other life-saving care for women, and force Christian nationalism into our schools and government, the legacy media is failing, and Tiffany Carlock, aka Candidly Tiff on all the social media platforms, talks to me about being an independent content creator, being a source of accurate information, helping her state and local candidates in Maryland, and giving folks insight into what it's like to be an activist going to the DNC. She's one of the many activists on social media and in real life, supporting candidates, knocking doors, and providing her vast audience with thoughtful, insightful, correct information. Tiffany Carlock, welcome to Freedom Over Fascism. I see you so much on social media, and you are so good at describing what is going on in the campaign, from the Kamala Harris campaign to the DNC to the Senate. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got involved in politics and what you see your role and your strengths are?
Politics has always been a passion of mine. I was always informed, but I never was activated until 2016. And then in 2022, we had our own race here in Maryland for a governor. And so I really got involved with that. I started raising money for Senate from middle of 2021 because we had two Black women running for Senate. Of course, they didn't win, but it still gave us a kind of a segue into how to raise money and what to do to help candidates, and that helped.
So Westmore.
He's my governor, and he invited me to come to an event. And I was already helping talk about the race. There was a lot of people running in that race, the primary. Hey, you want to meet Westmore? I'm like, sure, why not? And then he's, oh my God, I love your work. Can you please help me? And I'm like, okay, well, cool, sure. So that kind of got me into Maryland politics because before we've always had like really boring races here. There was really nothing going on. But this was the first time we had like a real primary in a really long time. And so it was nice to help him. And then, of course, he got elected, which was awesome. And then we get to now 2024, and we have a Senate race, which is Angela Brooks, who was running for Senate. And then I put in my paperwork to be a DNC delegate, and I got it. And so that's how I got to attend the DNC, which was amazing. So it's just been a kind of a long road of activism and going to events and doing things I normally wouldn't have done, but I've got the opportunity to do it using social media to be able to help candidates and talk about the issues in the Senate and races. And I think that's helped to give people insight onto, who these candidates are, what they do, what they're about. And they're seeing it from a different perspective. They're not seeing it, from the TV or from the media. They're seeing it from a real life person who is going to events and telling the story of what is going on. And I think that kind of gives the authentic feel of what it is to be involved in a campaign, but not necessarily be a paid person on a campaign. I've never been paid. But people tell me that, it inspires them to want to do the same thing. And I'm like, okay, well, that's cool because I do it for me. But if I'm inspiring someone along the way,
I wanna talk a little bit about social media. You have a really big platform now, and I wanna know how that has been and how you feel in terms of being visible. One of the things that Simon Rosenberg talks about all the time is that the advantage we have is that we are really activated and that we have a very large grassroots army from Kamala down to state ledge races, and you're one of the faces of that. How does that feel for you?
well, I think there's a responsibility that comes with it. You want to make sure you're giving people accurate information. You become a trusted voice for a lot of people. Having a small account is great because there's no drama, no one's bothering you, no one's coming at you. But the moment you start expressing your opinion, then you're gonna bring on the people who are gonna, disagree with you. But there's also really great people that also agree with you or give feedback or tell you things that you didn't expect you learn stuff yourself because there's things that I have learned. I'm not from PA, but I love PA politics. It's so messy. And I always laugh about it. I'm from a blue state. I'm from New York. We had simple races. You go, you vote, and that's it. So the social media aspect is a little bit time consuming too, right? I don't think people realize how time consuming being on social media is, especially if you have a large platform. But the perks of it is that it can inspire other people. People are learning, they learn from me. People don't always have the time to read articles or necessarily watch and see what's going on. I feel like I can inform people about what is happening so that they can make decisions and realize what's happening.
One of the things that's been a really big conversation over the course of this campaign, and frankly, the campaigns before, but it's becoming more and more clear, is that we have to be using different ways to reach people, right? I talked to Stephanie Shriak, who is a comms person, and I was talking a lot about message. She said, "Our message is fine. We're just not actually reaching people. We don't own stations like Sinclair does. We have to do a better job of creating our own media and using our own resources." And especially in the last week, the legacy corporate media has been moaning and groaning that Kamala Harris isn't doing interviews with them. And oh my God, that makes her a bad candidate. In the meantime, she's talking to people like Alex Cooper who have 5 million downloads a week, right? So the whole landscape has changed, but still that corporate media has a really outsized effect, particularly on older folks who sit there and watch TV. So, do you feel like you are reaching people who may not be interested in politics, but are interested in how their lives go, right? So, I remember Waltz a couple of weeks ago was talking to people who said, "Hey, I'm not really interested in politics," and he's a little too damn bad because politics is interested in you,
Right.
right? Do you feel like you're reaching people who just wanna live their lives and control their own reproductive systems and control their own healthcare and just have better access to good things, but don't necessarily feel like that is political? Do you get a sense that you're reaching those kind of people? Or are you mostly reaching people who are already involved?
Social media is such a weird thing because you don't know who you're reaching, right? You don't know who's on the other side of that camera. Like you don't know who's watching, especially on TikTok. You don't know who's watching, or even Instagram. But on TikTok, it always amazes me because people will come up to me and I'm at an event and this girl is, "Hey, I love your TikToks. You're amazing." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And she was a young girl. She was probably like in her 20s. And so it you just really never know who's watching. And so I feel like when you're in a situation like that, you just try to be just yourself and just say what needs to be said. But because you may reach someone who is in a different demographic than you, right? My dad is on TikTok. He loves TikTok, but he also loves MSNBC, right? So he's a little bit of both. He's retired. He sits at home and watches TikTok all day. He knows more about what's going on in pop culture and different things about politics than I do because his algorithm is tailored to politics and all this information that I don't have. I don't really like TikTok. I am not a TikTok person. So I am not scrolling TikTok all day. He spends a lot of time on TikTok, but then at night he's watching, mind you, he's on his phone all day, but he's also yelling at MSNBC and cursing them out. So it's a mix of both. So you don't really know. There are people that are politically active, and then there are people who are, okay, well, I just vote and thank you for this information. I didn't know this. I didn't know about what was going on. Thank you for reminding me to vote. So you get a mixed bag of people and what they're interested in. And it kind of depends on what you're talking about, right? And we can't drive algorithms. So you don't know who is being pushed information. Literally, you could watch one political video and then you get a ton of political videos, especially on TikTok. So you don't really know who you're talking to, but I think that's the important thing of just being truthful is because you never know who you can land on. I pride myself on being truthful about what I'm trying to say and being very intentional about my messaging so that it is going to the right audience. And even if you aren't political, you are still hearing what maybe you need to hear to just get out, like to get out the vote, or right now, get out the vote, or who is this person that was running in these races? Like you want to know the truth. The legacy media is not going to tell you all of the bad things about a candidate, nor are they going to tell you all the good things. They're going to tell you what they want you to know. And that is a little scary when you think about it. So you have to do the research.
Right. So let's talk about that legacy corporate media. I spent a lot of time on here talking about how their motivation is profit. And there's a lot of really great new media like Courier, like a lot of the people on Substack in particular. There's a very lively community of people who are independent journalists. But that legacy media just laps up everything that Trump does without too much criticism. So we're facing a moment where because the corporate media wants clicks and views, they're allowing really bad information, particularly about North Carolina and hurricanes, which is obviously meant to turn people against the federal government, although the people in it know that they're getting helped as a new hurricane is coming. So they're trying to create chaos because chaos sells. And the Republicans are trying to inject doubt. And it's all part of a coordinated, coordinated campaign between Russian disinformation, Iranian disinformation, and Republican disinformation, right? China. And it all comes together in a way that the corporate media laps up as a way to get people engaged and enraged, right? Your dad is yelling at MSNBC the whole time, right? My in-laws send me articles from the New York Times, but they're like, "Is this true? Look how bad Kamala's doing." And we know it's because the right wing is sticking polls in the polling averages are meant to dissuade people from going out to vote. So, how do you think about that? And how do you think we can move forward in a way that gets a little bit away from that engaging and enraging and disinformation and gets more truthful and activating information out there?
Yeah, well, I to your point, I think my daughter, she came to me last week and she's oh my God, this hurricane stuff. These people are saying stuff that I don't understand. And I had to literally walk her through it and show her articles of people who are paid influencers who are pushing this information. And she's, wow, I didn't know this. And I'm like, yeah, because you weren't supposed to know it. This is not stuff you're supposed to know. This is what I call an op or an operation that is meant to, like you said, dissuade you from voting, disliking the federal government, and using tragedy to be able to sow chaos. And I think that is so unfortunate because these people deserve better, right? So people are hearing all of this information and they're believing it. And I was thankful that there were so many people that were pushing back on it. But I feel like we are constantly playing defense because we don't know what the next thing they're going to lie about is. So it's really hard to combat something where you don't really know what the next story is going to be to fight it, right? So you are now stuck in a pattern where you have to say, okay, well, we are going to fight whatever disinformation comes our way or misinformation, but you're always going to play from behind because it feels like these people are two steps ahead of us, unfortunately. And they will exploit any tragedy to make up points about Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or whatever it may be, and whomever they've done it with the migrants for years, right? The caravan is coming. These are things that they have exploited rather than trying to find a solution to the problem. It's all about making people fearful. And I don't know if there's a way to really truly combat what they're doing. And that's unfortunate. And I think we have since 2016, we have really tried our best to fight the misinformation. But it feels like sometimes it feels like a losing battle because there really isn't much you can do to prevent it happening until the media, the legacy media, actually steps up and says, "Hey guys, you got to cut this out. Why are you putting this story out when you know that it's false? Why should we, as people who are on social media, have to spend our time discounting what the media is actually saying? Why are they doing the research? Why are they the ones that are calling it out?" And I think that is the most unfortunate part of it is that they've fed into the lies. It feels like they are part of the operation that is spreading the lies rather than
Right.
calling it out. And I think that is really the most unfortunate part of it because who do you trust in that, right? Who do you trust at that point if the media is carrying the message that we know is specifically being driven by the Republicans or by, we know, Russia and China? And this is not a secret. It is out there. US officials have told us that they are doing this. So it's really unfortunate, but I really don't know the answer to the question because I don't think there really is a way other than us going out there and telling the truth about it and hoping that people actually use their common sense and logic and say, you know what? Maybe this isn't true. Maybe this is a lie. Maybe this is not how things really work. And it feels like we're constantly educating people on the most basic functions of the government and that is tiring.
It is tiring, but I think that what you're saying is exactly what we need to be doing is people trust people they trust,
Yeah. Yep.
right? So if we're out there talking to people we know, that's gonna get us farther. But we also I was talking to Scott Dworkin, who spends all of his time talking about how the corporate media is getting it wrong. And I asked him, okay, well, what do we do to get people to stop watching cable news? And so I want to ask you the same question. We know they're doing it. Your dad is doing it, my parents are doing it, everybody's parents are doing it, and there's not very much real journalism left. I was watching clips of the Sunday shows yesterday, and why the hell is Tom Cotton still given a platform?
Right.
Like, why are we still asking, "So did Trump lose?" That's a dumb question. We know they're not gonna admit it. Let's move to what are they going to do? This I don't know what 20 Project 2025 is, a freaking lie. Do you have any sense of how you would like to see people be more critical in the sense of critical thinking of corporate media so that maybe they move on to different kinds of sources of information?
Yeah, well, one thing I would love for people to do, because we talk about legacy media, but we are mostly talking about cable news and probably the New York Times, right? The New York Times,
Right.
and there are still things that I enjoy reading in the New York Times. I don't love the salacious articles, but there are still good journalists who are part of the New York Times. So I wish that people would read more. Honestly, that sounds so simple, but I do wish that people would take the time to read articles, because the articles are actually more objective than talking heads on TV. Because what cable news does is they have a host and they have people giving their opinion. They're not giving facts. I long for the days when we had a Peter Jennings, or I
Mhm.
actually saw somebody, it was Connie Chung, that she was talking about how the state of the media today. And we actually had real journalists who would give us the news every single night, and we don't have that anymore. What we have now is, if you watch CNN, I refuse to watch CNN, but I see the clips of CNN, and now what they've done is, like, Abby Phillips, she has this panel. It's like a round table, and there's 6 people on there. And I'm like, and they're just going at it. They're just giving their opinions. There's no facts. I was actually happy that, I don't know if you know her, but Political Girl,
Yeah,
yeah,
politics girl.
yes, that she's actually been on the panel, and I was so impressed by the way she just told the truth, and you could tell she's not a media person. She's a content creator, because she knows the facts. And I think that was awesome, because you need people who are not bound to who they work for, to be able to just tell the truth. And
Right.
it was, as much as I cannot stand watching CNN, when I see her clips that she's posting, I'm like, thank goodness you're there. I
I
think that
mean,
I would have said that 10 years ago, that a social media person is on, and she does podcasts, so she's not just a social media person, but it's nice to have someone counteracting the BS. And yeah, I think, I don't know. It's just a weird thing, but I really do wish people would read more.
well, it's an interesting thing because these content creators, Lee McGowan, politics girl, or Allison Gill, who's Mueller, She Wrote. There are so many fantastic content creators, who are actually working for the people, right?
Right.
Some monetization, some people get way more than others. I'm sure Lee McGowan is actually
Oh, yeah.
making money, and I'm sure Allison Gill is actually making money. I make $12 a month, maybe if I'm lucky. But it's really a much more direct way of reaching people. And the fact that the Democratic Party is realizing this, and so they're having content creators come to the White House and doing briefings, and I think is really smart, giving them more information and a better platform because they're giving out better information in a more engaging way than all these people screaming at each other
Yeah. Yeah, well, the
on
White House press, I think most people, when they watch, the questions that they're asking are not questions that we want to know about. I don't care why Joe Biden was in Delaware versus being at the White House. And I loved his answer. There's phones, like, there's
yeah.
video. We have Zoom now. Like,
Yes.
I don't need to be physically in the White House. And that is a testament to our technology, the times that we're living in, right? COVID taught us a lot about how we can work virtually from different locations. But the fact that they ask these questions as if anyone else is thinking about these things it's embarrassing. To
Right,
really and truly listen to the questions that they ask, and then they wonder why they don't get interviews, or they wonder why it VP is going on Call Me Daddy, or she's going on All the Smoke podcast. These people are asking questions that the rest of us want to know. I thought both of my husband, he's a sports person. And so he knew All the Smoke. He watches podcasts once in a while. I've never even heard of Call Me Daddy podcast.
yeah, we're too old.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not that but I enjoyed both of those interviews because they were asking her poignant questions about who she is as a person. where the media would never ask her questions. They never ask her questions. In both interviews, I think they asked about mental health. Hello, that's a serious thing. Blended families. It was funny because they both asked similar questions, and I don't think these two podcasts have any crossover, right? But they ask similar questions because these are things that people like us want to know. We want to get to know Kamala as a person, not necessarily as a politician. While, of course, she is a politician and she's running for office, people want to know her heart. They want to know what she cares about, what is important to her. And that's how you connect with people. So going on those podcasts actually, I think, is a super smart thing because the legacy media doesn't ask those questions. They want salaciousness. They want, I thought the one she did with Stephanie Rule was pretty good. She let her talk and ask questions. And what I'm 60 Minutes tonight is probably going to be very interesting. Howard Stern, sometimes he can get a little crazy, but he was good with Biden. But
No, I think that the Howard Stern we remember from whatever 15, 20 years ago is a very different
I
Howard Stern
agree.
than we see today.
I agree, right? So we think of him as shock jock, right? That's how we think of him. But I think his audience is a little bit different now. And so I will watch that. I haven't listened to Howard Stern since I lived in New York and was on my way to school. My dad watching it, listening to it in the
Yeah,
car. So it's a totally different, we're in a totally different era of media. And I like it. I think it's a good thing. And I think the VP like embracing it and the White House embracing it is pretty cool. Like even Biden
yeah,
before he dropped out, he was on Feeding Mormons podcast, which was like totally out of the element of Joe Biden. But it was still a good interview. And he asked him like some really important questions. We've come a long way, but we still have so much longer to go in terms of
right.
even dealing with our with the like I said, the corporate media is just horrible. They just are. It's very rare that you get people. I think like Robert Costa is probably one of the only people that I actually respect now because even through the Biden dropping out drama, he actually held his integrity. A lot of people didn't. It was bad.
It is, right. And if you pay attention like we do, you'll see the evolution of Dana Bash and that there are a couple people, as you say, on MSNBC, like today, right? I agree that the content creators are really reaching us and the campaign is really smart. And I have found what I found has been so amazing is that the moment VP became the candidate, the same exact staff flipped
Yep.
the way that they were messaging
Wasn't it crazy?
in a way that reflected her. And it was unreal. It was real. But I thought it was phenomenal the way that they could capture a different mood and a different sense of being on the offensive.
Yeah, and I think too, like I was the night of Biden's debate, the horrible debate,
Oh my
I was
gosh.
actually in headquarters. And so this was like insanity. Okay. People were freaking out. I'm like the oldest person, literally like the one of the oldest people in there. And I'm like, guys, calm down. It's gonna be okay. Like I'm trying to be the mother and just calm everyone down because they really were freaking out. And so I think because everyone there is really young, they get it. Like they get who to outreach, they get the language, they get what people want to hear. And even the whole brat thing, like I that is a testament to them being super young and understanding kind of what influences people. And there's
Mhm.
not to say, my daughter, she's 25, she's Gen Z. My mom is texting me like, "Do you know what brat is?" And I'm like, "I have no idea." It was it crossed all generations where people were excited from people who are older to people who are younger. And we all aligned in that way to say, okay, well, maybe we love Joe Biden, but maybe we deserve something new. We deserve
Mhm.
something fresh. And I think the campaign was really excited that they had that opportunity to be able to have a new, fresh message. And part of it too could have been by Biden is older, so he had a very structured way that he wanted things. And everyone on the campaign, from Jen Dillon O'Malley, who's the campaign manager, I think she's in her 40s. People are younger and they have a different perspective on what works. Yeah, people want to see the campaign fighting. They don't want laid back, hey guys, everything's going to be okay. They want in your face from sucks. That's what they
Right.
want. They want
They
to
do.
see the Democrats fight. And so Democrats are now fighting and people like
Right.
that.
I think that's true. And it's so hard to get a read on where we are given the fact that there's a constant stream of lies coming out of the other side in ways that can actually putting these junk polls into the polling average, pulling it down makes people think that Kamala is losing. Like, my
Yeah.
parents and my in-laws are like, "Oh my god, she's losing."
Oh, I know. The
No,
junk
like,
poll thing is very interesting because they started doing that in 2022, and you can see. And I love polls. Like I was a poll girl in 2022. I looked at every poll. I would analyze the polls. Like I was on it. But this cycle, I can't. There's so many that I can't even really dive deep into the polling because there's so much junk that are. I'm seeing names that I have never seen before putting out polling in Pennsylvania, and there are specific polls that are. I follow the 2022 Senate. There are specific polls that are PA polls that everyone respects and cares about. I am seeing names that I have never seen before being thrown into the averages. But in the end, that doesn't really help anyone, especially Republicans, because it is a false premise that these people are going to, that it's a close race, but it really isn't. Right. So we saw that with John Fetterman. Like they had his race, I think the day before, it was like 0.5%. And then when he wins, it's like he won by 5 points. And people were like, oh my God, I can't believe he won. Yeah, because these polls are being averaged out and they're not accurate. They're not accurate. And I just don't think Larry Sabato and I like had a little back and forth in Twitter. And I asked him, I said, do you think that these polls are, do you think it's the people that they're calling or do you think it's the pollster? And he said, I think it's the people that they're calling. They're just not that smart. And I was like, you know what? I agree with you. You're calling the same people and expecting a different result. But these people are giving you the same answers. They're not informed voters for the most part. Listen, there's things that people want to be improved. But to say this is like a terrible economy, that is propaganda. I'm sorry. It just is. And so the polls trip me out. My mom is calling me like same thing like you said. Your parents call me. Oh my God, this election is so close. Even in Maryland, right? My mom is she gets like the news and on her phone. She gets notifications. She's like, God, is Angela gonna lose? I'm like, Mom, I'm out canvassing. I'm out talking to voters. I think she's gonna be okay. And but she's being sold that it's a tight race between her and Larry Hogan. And I'm like, I'm telling you that it's not. I can tell you what the polls are going to show before the polls come out. And I know where the race is at. And I knew where the race was at in the primary, but no one wanted to listen to me. No one did. And until it happened, they were like, oh, okay. Listen,
right.
my theory is if you want to know where race is, talk to the people that are doing the work on the ground. They're the
Yeah.
ones who are knocking on doors. They're the ones talking to people. They are getting the comments in their social media. People are telling them how they're going to vote, what they're going to do, how they're going to go forward. And you can get a better trajectory than a poll. A poll is only talking to maybe 1,000 people at one time. And
Who pick up their
right,
phones.
who pick up their phones, who respond to an email, respond to a text, and that is not a good sample of voters, right? You have a better shot of talking to people. Saturday, we went to a festival, and we were passing out information, and people were like, "Oh, I already voted, I love Angela, blah blah blah." There were people who just were not engaged at all, and they were like, "I don't want you. I don't want you. You're a little flyer. Leave me alone. I don't care about voting." But you're gonna get a mix. You can get a feel. Like there was thousands of people there, and we have about 30 volunteers who are out there. Just people love the stickers. Like people, there are people that just politics is so odd because the things that entertain people, you would stickers. Like really, people were loving the stickers. Everybody walked out of there with green stickers on for Angela. So you just never know what I'm like stickers. I don't. You would think people want buttons. They want to. They like the stickers. They
They like this.
like, and that I think it's very much a social experiment to see how people really engage in politics, right? There are people that are super engaged, there are people that have no engagement, and you really don't know when you knock on someone's door. They're on the voter rolls because they're on this list, but you don't know how they're going to react, or you don't know what they're going to say, or even if they're going to open the door. And the people that open the door, like a couple of weekends ago, we went out, and the girl was like, She was a young girl. She was like, "Oh, my aunt, she is amazing. She loves Angela and Kamala, and oh yeah, we're all gonna vote." So she was not really my thing, but my aunt, she gives all kind of money to these people, and so I'm following her lead. So you really don't know how people are going to react when you talk about, and it's a hard thing. A lot of people don't want to talk about politics. I think more people are willing to talk. Even my husband, he is more engaged now than he's ever. He didn't even vote before. No, that's sad to say because I'm always pushing people to vote. I was on the ballot to be a DNC delegate, so he had no choice but to vote for me. That would have been grounds for divorce if you didn't vote for me. He
Right, right.
registered to vote and he obviously voted for me, but now he's voting in the election. And so he got his mail-in ballot. He doesn't even have to go to the polls. He doesn't, no one needs to see him. He can just fill out the thing and put it in the envelope, sign it, and send it back. And it's so easy to vote. And I don't think people recognize how simple it is to vote in certain states, especially in blue states.
In blue states. In red states, they make it as hard as humanly possible
Exactly.
for a reason,
Yeah,
right? They don't want people voting.
they sure don't, especially in Mississippi. They definitely don't want people.
So they don't want people voting. They don't want people educated. So they've taken civics out of the education.
Yep.
They don't want people to know the truth. They don't want people to organize. It's very clearly attempting to recreate or continue the oligarchy, the white male Christian nationalist oligarchy that has been present.
Yep. They're fighting for their future while we're trying to fight for our freedom. And if we're on a collision course in this election, of who's going to win the battle? And I really do hope that people take it seriously. And I think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people are taking it seriously. I think there's still people who are apathetic. I think there's people who are in the middle who don't know. I don't know how you are just undecided at this point, but it makes no sense to me. But I think there are people who are still torn, like people who know that Donald Trump is not a good person. And there's early voting, there's vote from home. You can vote on a mail ballot. You can go on election day, which will be less people. We are not in the same place we were like with Obama, where I stood online for an hour and a half to vote for him, right? We've come a long way since then. We've come a long way in terms of accessibility to be able to vote. And yet you still have people who are like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't have time to vote. Like,
Right,
yeah, but yeah, you have time to do other things. Like
right,
this is your future at stake. It's interesting to hear people's rationale for why they are not going to do this or how they're going to do it, or they just aren't informed about what is happening and why it's important to vote and what does this mean for you, right? I think that
right. That's the
in the Kwame Daddy interview, I think her talking specifically about abortion rights and why it's important for women to vote and this matters. So I think that is that if that was the demographic and she did a damn good job. Because even
yeah,
I was like, okay, well, yeah, I was inspired by what she was saying and I watch her all the time. So
right.
it's just an interesting kind of thing to see people react. And it was, I will say, the feedback on TikTok. I was actually on there this morning, and there was a lot of people who were like, "She did an amazing job." They loved her answer about being humble. They love that answer. Young girls love that answer.
Right. Who needs to be humble?
Right. What year is this again? Why do I need to be
Like,
humble? So it's like it's
right.
simple. It wasn't even that wasn't even the purpose of the interview, but it was a thought provoking question that got an answer that actually like motivated women to be like, well, I don't have to have a traditional family. I can have a blended family. I can go and pursue my career and do all the things that I want to do. No, I don't have to be humble for you men out there or you women who believe in the patriarchy.
On that note, I wanna thank you for coming on and talking about this. I had a great time talking to you. I think that you reach a lot of people and you make a big difference, and I wanna thank you for coming and talking to us.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I love talking to you as well.
Thank you for listening to Freedom Over Fascism. Please leave a rating or review wherever you listen. And if you can, please subscribe at www.freedomoverfascism.us.